guys, Samantha from Jessica Tutorials here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create this necklace. I'm just going to bring it over, and so hopefully you can see what that looks like. It's got this cool faux rust effect to it. Let me just brighten the camera up so you can see a little better. There we are. So hopefully you can see what that looks like. So it's got a lovely Nautilus design, and I was going for kind of a Jurassic fossil kind of look to it. And here are the backs, so you can see it. We have a nice texture on the back as well, and we have these cool hammered little wire spirals. And so this is basically what we are going to be making today. So first I want to show you how to create the stamps. And now these stamps can be a little tricky to make, so if you guys don't feel like spending the time making it yourself, because it can take a little while, I do sell a set on my Etsy shop, and this is the set. So this is the stamp that we're going to be making today, and I'm also going to show you how to make this one because it's a little bit different, but they're a little tricky to make. So if you guys don't feel like spending the time making them because they take a little while, I do sell them on Etsy in one set like this. So the entire set will be on Etsy, and I'll provide a link to that. But for now, I'm going to show you how to create it. I'm also going to show you how to create the texture on the back like this. And so we're going to start with the Nautilus, and you're going to need some ball tools for this, and I'll bring those over, and here they are. So you're going to need the small version, so you can see that they go down to a really small point. So these are all you're going to need. So I'll start with the smallest one, which is this one, and I don't really want to use this end, I want to use this end. And what we're going to do is we're gently going to trace out a Nautilus shape. And don't press hard into the clay, you just want to be gently sculpting out that rounded shape so that you have a guideline to work with. So just gently trace it out. Doesn't matter if it's perfect, you just want a guideline. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now I'm going to start from the middle, and I'm going to work outwards. So I'm going to start like this, almost like a flower petal shape. And I'm just going to gently tap those down and round them out. Okay, then I'm going to switch over to a slightly larger ball tool so that we can make a larger hole. And I'm going to continue going around. And I'm just going to go make this one just a tad larger. So you can see that it takes a little while. And it's tricky as well because you need to get this right. Okay, so I'll continue going around like that. Okay, and there we are. That's basically it. And then basically what you'd get is you'd just take a round cutter and cut it out, and just smooth out any lines that you might have. Tap it down gently to get rid of any raised areas, and that would be your texture stamp. Now we're not going to use this one because I have already made one over here which I showed you. Now I'm going to show you how to create this one. Okay, so what you're going to need again is you're going to bring over your small ball tool, and you're gently going to trace out your pattern like that. And I'm just going to bring this over so that I can see what I am doing. I'm going to start from the middle, and we're gently going to start rotating. And as I said before, this is a guideline, so if it doesn't work out, don't stress about it. It's just to get you started. So you can see we're just going around. Try to make these a little bit longer as you go. And so you can see it's a little tricky and it's time consuming, so if you have the patience, by all means go for it. But you do have the option of just buying the stamps. So I just continue going around until I was finished. There we are, so I'm basically finished. It's a little different from the other one. I can't really recreate my stamps perfectly because they're all handmade. And now what I like to do is I like to take something with a sharp end and I like to scrape down here to give it kind of a scratched look. And I do that with all of them, and then that would be how I'd use it. But again, I've already made one, so I'm not going to go and remake it, but I'm pretty sure you get the idea. So that's how I make that one. Now I'll move on to the other scratch one. So for the scratch one, what we're going to bring is some sort of sharp tool. You can use a needle. You just need something with a sharp end. And what you're going to do is you're just going to start layering scratches. And press into the clay quite deep, okay? Because it is a texture that you want to be able to press in. So if it's not deep enough, it's not really going to work. So make sure to press into your clay. And you can have short and long strokes. You can have strokes overlapping themselves. It's supposed to kind of look like fur. So this one's already shaping up, and basically that's how I created the other one. And now I bake all of my texture stamps for an hour at Cato's recommended temperature, because my texture stamps are made from leftover clay, and basically I've got a whole mix of brands in there, so I like to just bake it at Cato's recommended temperature. It doesn't too matter if the clay scorches a little bit, because we're not really going to use them for their colour, and I want to make sure that they're good and strong so that they're going to stand up to me pressing clay into them, and basically so that they stand up to wear and tear. So make sure that you bake them at a full hour at Cato's recommended temperature, or if you're sure that you use Primo and not a clay that requires a higher temperature, you can use it. You can bake it at Primo's recommended temperature, but I use Cato quite a bit, so there's quite a bit of Cato mixed into my leftover clay, so I like to bake it at Cato's recommended temperature. So there you can see that we've got quite a bit of overlap, and I'll just lift that up so you can see. So I'd cut that out again, pop that in the oven, and that would yield me the stamp. So that is what we need for this tutorial. So go ahead and make your stamps, and then we can start creating our beads. Okay, so here is a sheet of white that was rolled out on the thickest setting of my pasta machine, and this is what we're going to use. So I'm just going to cut it into sections, and I'm going to bring over my Nautilus and a spray bottle. And when using polymer clay stamps, you want to make sure that you always lubricate them, and you need to give them a generous amount of water or a generous amount of cornstarch, because being that you're pressing polymer clay into polymer clay, they tend to stick together more than, say, some of the other stamps like rubber, which is a little bit of a problem, but so long as you lubricate it, it doesn't actually cause any problems. There we are. So there's our impression. Looks really nice, quite happy with it. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm just going to trim away these edges. we want to leave a good amount of space for us to cut out our pendant later on. Here we go. Now you need to dry this. So now the next step is to bring over our pastels, and I always use this kit, and you can get this off of Amazon. And so this is the kit that I like to use because it comes in many different colours. So I'll just show you that once I've opened it up. And it lasts a long time, so it's well worth the price. So you can see we have a bunch of pastels in here. And this is just artist pastels. So you can see the label over there. Okay, so I'll put that over to the side once we've selected our colours. Now we're going for a rusty look, so I'm going to be picking these colours over here. And we also want some of these browns. We really want to go for this whole brown tone. Pick that one as well. We might have some of these oranges. And be generous with your colours. The more variation in colour you have, the more interesting it will look. And it's not like you're using a lot of each colour. So I've just got those ones, and I'll bring over my craft knife because I want to use this to scrape off the pastel. So I'm going to start with my base colour, which is this rust colour, which is what I want to be the dominant colour. And I'm just going to shave a fair amount onto here. Now don't worry if you have waste pastel, I'll show you a way of fixing that up. Then I've got a brush, and I'm actually going to stipple it, or dab it, so that it's not an even coverage of pastel. You want an uneven coverage so that you have darker areas and lighter areas. And then I'll brush it towards the end just to make sure we don't have any loose particles. Okay. And then I'll bring over this one, which kind of has a nice raw sienna look to it. Kind of a tan look. Bring that over, stipple it in. You can see that we're going to have waste pastel, but I always have ways of using that up. That never gets actually wasted. And I'll bring over this nice dark chocolatey, well I guess it's not really chocolatey, I guess it's more coffee. That one's more chocolatey. And I'll spray on just a little bit, I don't want too much of this one. Now I'll kind of bring it out around the sides. And then the dark one I bring over as well, and just this one I don't want too much, so I'm going to gently spray a little bit. And it's important to dab it on. You don't want to be brushing backwards and forwards, because then you will get a nice even cover. And we are trying to imitate rust, so excuse me, you can't have an even cover of colour, because otherwise it's going to look it's not going to look natural enough. And I'm always going to go back to that rust colour, which is my base, and I'm going to cover up every now and then, but you'll be able to see all the layering underneath, so don't worry about that, it's not going to cover it all up. I just want to go and pay a little bit of attention to these sides. And I might show you a video of what I do with these scrap pastels. That could be a bonus at some point this month. So, might do that. And so basically I'm just showing you what I'm doing so you can at least try and duplicate it. But no two pieces are going to look the exact same, because it's not an exact formula. You need to mess around with it and play around with it and see what suits your tastes. And so I'm showing you the general colours and the general idea, but don't try and get the exact same colour as what I'm trying to get over here. Don't fuss about getting it exactly the same as mine, because most of them aren't going to look the exact same. Okie dokie. So that's the first one. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm now going to bring over my cutter. I'm just going to check that that's the right size. Yes. Okay, now my head needs to get in here so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I've got it in the right position. Now I'm gently going to press down. I'm not going to press down all the way. I just want to create a mark so that I know where I want my bead to be taken out. And I'm going to bring over a piece of 40 grit sandpaper. And I'm gently going to tap the top of this and around the sides. Be careful when you're touching the imprint to this part because you don't want to flatten it. I flattened it before by accident and it doesn't look good. So just be careful when you're doing this. Go around carefully and make sure that you pay attention to what you're doing. Don't just go willy-nilly. Now we want to do this to give it some texture. You don't have to, but I think it makes it look better, in my personal opinion. So I'm just going to move these out the way. And now don't worry if you're getting exposed white spots, we'll be able to fix that up in just a second. That's why I haven't cut this out yet, because we still need to work with it just a little bit. We need to put a little bit more pastel on to cover up these white spots, and because we're using the sandpaper, the shape is going to get slightly distorted, but I know where I want to be working so that I don't spend the whole time sandpapering the entire piece, because that is a waste of time. And there we are. So I'm quite happy with that. Just go lightly dab this, and so what that's going to do is hopefully you can see that around the outside here we have a nice imprint of the texture, but towards the middle it's more smooth, which creates a really interesting effect. Now I'm going to bring over that base rust colour again and shave some on, and I'm going to try and cover up all of these white spaces. So I'm going to actually smooth it on. There we go. Just like that. And now I'm going to cut it out. And I'm just going to rotate and then keep this. Can create some really cool things with that. And that's our bead at the moment. Now what I'm going to do is you want to gently bring over these pastels and just scoop them into one area of your tile and just move them over to the side, because there's not enough there to put in a bag yet, and because we're going to be doing more, so don't brush them anywhere, but you do want them out of the way. Then we'll bring over this again, and I'm going to be using alcohol ink, and this is terracotta. You want some sort of a rusty reddish colour. And take a small brush and dab a little bit on, and you want to go around and kind of mark up a few areas that maybe you had some white left, and so you want to just have some areas where you have little blooms. And I like to brush the top of this. Kind of highlight it. There we go. And then I'll just pack that away. I'm just going to brush in some of the areas where it's a little too light for my liking. Excuse me, my throat's a little bit hoarse today, so if I'm sounding a little bit crackly, I'm sorry. Okay, take a little bit of that base rust colour again. Just going to dab that around just to make sure. And again, it's always just about getting your layers correct so that you have just enough of each colour to give it a little bit of colour variation. But you want to keep it at that reddy, rusty sort of colour. I'm happy with that. But I might want to sandpaper it just a tad more on the top here, because that part's important. And I'm not pressing very hard, I'm more just lightly tapping. And then I'll just fill in those areas with the alcohol ink to get rid of the white. Okay, I'm not going to fuss with it anymore, I'm happy with it. Okay, so I'm going to do some more now, so I'm just going to pick that up and put it to the side, and I'm going to do 2 more, and I'm going to try and get the colours the exact same. Okay, so I've done another one over here, and so it's almost the exact same colour. And I've also imprinted the larger Nautilus that I showed you earlier, this one. I've done an imprint of that one, and that one I'm going to cut out now, and I'm using a larger circle, one size up from my other circle, and this will be the middle one for me. So we're going to bring over our rust, but I'm not going to put on too much, and I'm going to bring over that chocolatey colour again. I want this to be our base. I want this one to have a more yellowy look to it, so that it can stand out of it. And our bead is a little bit wet, as you can see, so you get that cool painty sort of effect, which is fine. It doesn't matter if your bead's still a little wet. After you stamped it in, just make sure that you get a nice cover. I want to try and get rid of all the white spots. There we are. And then I'm going to bring over that tan colour, and I'm going to mix that with a little bit of a light orange. And I'm going to rotate. And then brush it in. Then I'm going to bring over my rust again, because I do want it to be the same. I do want it to match with these ones, so you don't want to have it too far off of that colour, but I just don't want it as rusty red as those ones. So this one I'm just trying to get that the pastel clumps out of the grooves, because I don't want too much of that. And I'm just going to spray on a little bit of that coffee colour, just dab it around, just making sure to get rid of any white areas. And I can bring some of the excess pastel that's lying around and brush that up onto the bead as well. You can always use the excess pastel that's lying around to do that, and then you've got a mix of all of the colours that you've been using. And there we are, that's kind of a more brownish colour, but it matches. So this one's a little bit more brown as well. So now we're going to bring over the sandpaper again. I'm just going to, a little bit, just going to tap it onto the surface. And now this one's pattern's a little bit more bulky than the other one, so I don't have to worry too much about this one getting squished. Though I don't want to press too hard, I'm pressing very lightly. Because I want that sandpaper texture all over the place, because it really gives it that lovely stoned look. And it just adds more visual interest to something that's effective but simple. Okay, there we are. I'm pretty happy with how much texture there is. Now I'm going to bring over some of that alcohol ink again, and I'm going to bring over that special brush. It's a little bit smaller, and I'm going to brush this over everything. And now the alcohol ink can sometimes brush away a little bit of your pastel, so you can see that some of these areas are lighter now, since we have rub the alcohol ink on. Don't worry about that. We're going to replace the pastel, and then later on we're actually going to sand the surface just a tad to get some of that light white to come through. But the white will be kind of a lighter reddish hue. It won't be a perfect white, because you don't want that. So now I'm going to bring over a little bit of the coffee, then some chocolate, and some rust. And then I'll just kind of twirl that around and brush it over the surface. Bring over some of the excess pastel just to make sure that I have a nice cover. And you know, that's a much darker colour compared to the other ones, which is nice. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over a wet wipe. I'm gently going to rub along the surface just a tad. And this should remove a little bit of that pastel. Don't worry too much about removing it yet. Just want to remove a little bit. Especially in the places that are going to be difficult to sand, like over there. There we are. And that will just make it look more interesting. Now don't worry, we are going to sand, so it's going to look a little bit better afterwards. And I will bring over these other ones as well, because I want to do the same for them. And so this one I think actually needs a little bit more chocolate on it, because I want to try and keep these the same colour, which is probably the hardest part of this tutorial, getting all your pieces to be around about the same colour. Okay, and I'll just gently brush across the surface, and I'm not sure if we're going to get off a bit of pastel here. Brush around the edges as well. Now I can see that we're getting off just a little bit. Just want a light touch. Don't push on this. I'm brushing, but I'm not pushing down on it at all. I'll do the same over here. And we have a little bit of white exposed there. So I'll just dunk into my pastels over here. Just brush that up. Now I'm going to bring over some 90% alcohol, which is this stuff, and this helps remove the pastels a bit more. So I'm going to just spray a little bit onto my wet wipe. Don't soak it, just a little bit, and then very lightly brush, because this will remove it very quickly. There, it's moving much quicker now. That's excellent. And there, so depending on how much you remove, you can get some areas that are kind of dark, some areas that are looking a little bit lighter, like over there, and it just really brings the design to life. This is a very necessary part. And now if you can't get the pastels off, you can sand it later, but I do prefer to take it off while it's raw, because if I make a mistake and I go too far and I think I made the colour a little too light, I can always go back and add more pastel. But once it's baked, the problem is that the pastel's not really going to adhere to your clay, so you could end up with a little bit of a problem there if you had a mistake. So it's better to try and do it while it is raw. And there we are, that's looking much better. Just try to do the raised areas so that you can get the pattern out. Okay, now this one I feel like it needs a little bit more sandpaper, because when I was rubbing it I smeared it just a tad, and so just want to show you what I'm doing, just because the process is not straightforward. So I don't want to give you the false impression that it's step, step, step and then done. It's go back and repeat steps, add new steps, check again, maybe you need to go back to the beginning and add more pastels. It's something that you need to muck around with, so I have to show you me mucking around with it. So I'm sorry this part's a little bit long. You can skip forward if you want, but I think it's important to show you what I'm doing. Okay, so just the last bit, I'm just remove a little bit more pastel. Okay, and then I'll leave it. Okay, so those ones are done. You want to go back and make sure that they are still around, so I need to do that off camera. Okay, so they're round, they're all good to go. We actually didn't end up with any leftover pastels. I used them on these when we were mucking around with it. So now we need to do the backs, but I don't want to distort them or distort the pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over my heat gun and I'm going to lightly heat the top so that it's still raw on the bottom but baked on the top. So the lights are going to flicker when I do this. Okay, so you just want to bake it a little bit, don't go overboard. Now I'm going to check this, and I need to go a bit longer, but I'm going to do that off camera. I'm just going to basically carry on with what I was doing. Okay, so I've baked them, and when you want them to be baked, you want to be able to touch your finger to it, and just make sure that you let it cool first, so you don't get a false impression. Just brushing off stuff. Bring your finger over, and if you can move it over without anything sticking or dragging, then it's baked properly. You want it to, it's slightly soft underneath. Now these need to cool completely so that they're cold before you pick them up, because otherwise they're going to crack and distort. So I'll let these cool, I'll clean up the workspace, pack things away, and then we can move on to the back. Okay, so they're cooled. Now I'm just gently going to lift them off the tile, and be careful with this because they're still raw. So the backs look like that. I'm just going to put that over to the side, pick up each one. So when you're heat gunning it, it's important to make sure that you don't overdo it so that your backs bake, because you want those to be raw so that you get a good adherence to the pieces that we're going to start putting on now. Let me just clean this up. It's not too important to keep your work surface clean at the moment, because really you're going to be messing around with pastels again, so you don't have to worry too much. So bring over some white clay, and we'll bring over that stamp, which is the scratched one. Give it a good soak and press your clay in, and this clay was rolled out on the thickest setting again. I'm just going to give it a good pressing, and it should give us a really nice texture. There we go. And now this tile's a little wet, so I like to just press it against the tile and move it around because the water will allow it to not stick. There we go. Now just get rid of that water. Gently lift it out the stamp. Hopefully you can see there that we have a lovely furry sort of pattern. This needs to get dried off. Okay, so I've cut out the circles that we are going to need, because those are the sizes that we're going to need. And now I'm going to bring over our rust. We're going to do both of these all at the same time. this one might need a little bit more powder. And basically we're just going to do the exact same that we did with the other ones. This one you don't have to be so strict about, you just want to give it a nice pastel-y finish that looks similar to the one to what is on front, but you don't have to be as strict about getting it to the exact rust look. You don't have to worry about the sandpaper and the alcohol ink and things like that, because, well, there's no pattern on the back really that's going to benefit from that. So just continue doing basically what I'm doing here, adding different colours until you are happy with what the backs look like, and then I'll show you how to attach them. There we are, quite happy with how those look. Now I'm just going to bring over that wet wipe again, wrap it around my finger, spray just a little bit of alcohol on it, and just lightly brush over the top of the surface. Just like that, and that will give it a little bit more interest. Okay, then I'll bring over my brush and I'm just going to gently brush over the surface just to get some of those pastels loose, just to tint that from white to a light brown, and that's what we're going to use. So I'll pick these all up individually, very carefully. Okay, and just quickly get rid of this because we're not going to be working with the pastels anymore, so we do want this area to be somewhat clean. Then I'll bring this over, and be careful because this has basically the strength of a potato chip right now. And place that down on it. Just gently sandwich the two together, and then take your finger and gently smooth around the edges. Now don't worry too much about the edges, we are going to fix that later on, so it doesn't matter too much right now. Just make sure to smooth around the edges so that you don't have any overhanging bits. So let's have a look at that from the front. And if I can see any bits that are showing up, then I'll carry on, but I can't see any bits. And I like to sometimes take my blade and very carefully smooth using it. But there we are. That's how we'll do with what we'll do with each of them. There we are. Done the backs. They're all ready to go in the oven. I'm going to put this in the oven at Primo's recommended temperature for a full hour to make sure that I get it all baked. So I'll bake it for an hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and then I'll come back and show you how to fix up these edges, and then we can start finishing it off. Okay, so they're out of the oven, and here's what they look like. So you can see that there's not much colour difference. And so now what we want to do is we want to clean up these edges. So I'm going to bring over some black clay that I've warmed up in my hands, and I'll roll it into somewhat of a log shape, place it onto my circle like that, grab it and smear around just like this. There we go. So you can see that the edge is much better now, and it will fill in those gaps, so it means that you don't have to worry about those gaps. And I just carry on smearing until I've used up all my clay, and then just gently fiddle around with it to get rid of any overhanging black bits. Now you don't have to use black, you could also use white and paint it with pastel if you wanted to, but I think the black looks quite nice. And then just take your finger and gently smooth around the edge just to make sure that you get rid of fingerprints. And you would do the same for the other two, and then you'd put this in the oven for another half an hour to bake, and then that would basically be it for making the beads. And so then in the next part we'll move on to giving them a light sand and popping some Renaissance wax on and assembling them. So now that they are finished baking, we can move on to the sanding part. So I'm going to be using polishing papers, and here are the papers. And so I've got a big wad of them. Some of them are used, some of them aren't. I like to keep all my old ones so I can sand on top of them and create a nice pad for me to work on. So the green ones are the lowest grit, and that's the ones that we want to work with first. So what we're going to do is I'm going to bring over a nice wad of them. I'm going to start working. I just want to be sanding a little bit so that we expose that white. So hopefully you can see already what a difference this has made. And so we're not trying to get it to a high shine. We are only going to be doing this on the lowest grit, at least the front bit that is. So that's what the front looks like. We're going to be doing that on the back a little bit, not too much. So give it a little sand on the back. Get that to shine up as well. And now the sides you want to sand, but these ones you want to sand like normal, where you sand from the lowest grit all the way up to the highest grit, because these ones you want to have a nice high polish to them. But the front and the back you just want to sand it on the lowest grit, and then that will be just about fine, because we want to keep that nice rustic look. So I'm not looking for a high polish. So I'll do that with all of them, and then I'll show you how to apply the Renaissance wax, and then we can start assembling our necklace. Okay, so they're all sanded. Now we're going to pop some Renaissance wax on them. So I'll bring them over, and you can see they look a lot more striking now. So that's the fronts, that's the backs. We have a little hijacker there that I need to get off. That one's back. There. And you can see at the sides have a nice satin finish to them. Okay, so I'll open up the Renaissance wax. Here's what it looks like. And I'll bring over an old polishing cloth. So old that it's actually really nice for buffing now. And I'll just dip that into the Renaissance wax and close the Renaissance wax up, because I don't want that drying out or anything like that. And I'm gently going to tap the surface of this, because I've got a little bit too much Renaissance wax on here, so there should be enough for more than two. So I'll just gently buff this one, and I'll do the same for this one. And please note that the powders will come off to a certain degree, but once the Renaissance wax is dried, I find that they don't come off afterwards. So it's nice. So if you have any white areas where you over did it, this will seal it up nicely. Don't forget to do the sides, give them a nice light coat of Renaissance wax, and do the back too. Just give it a good buff, and I'll do the same for the other two. So here they are, now that they've been buffed, and hopefully you can see what a wonderful shine these have now. But we need to put them aside for a good 10 or so minutes to let that Renaissance wax cure. And in the meantime, we're going to make the spirals that we need for our necklace. So if I bring it over, this one over here. So you can make just a quick note, you can make this one as well, just by doing 3 of these. But I decided to make the middle one like this, but you can just do 3 of those. We're going to be making these spirals while we wait for that to cure. So I'm just going to bring over some head pins, and these are a little wonky, so I'll just start with the least wonky of them, and I'll just straighten them out with my pliers, just like that. And I want to just snip off the head, and I want to bring over my round nose pliers and create a loop just like that. Now I bring over my bent nose, you can use chain nose, and I want to start curling this around. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing there. Just curling around. Okay, and once I get to a certain point, what I want to do is I want to bring over my round nose again, and I want to create a small loop on this end, just like that. Okay, and then I'll just carry on twisting this just a little bit more until it meets up and makes a nice neat spiral like that. I'll just squish that flat. Now you can leave it like that, you don't have to do the next step, but I like to give it a little bit of a whack. So I'm just going to bring this over, and this is a rubber block and a steel block. A steel block needs a little bit of a clean. We'll use this side. I don't use this very often. Okay, now this is a little noisy, so you might want to switch off your headphones or just turn the sound down, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be hammering this. So I'm just going to use my pliers to try and hold on to this. Use the ball. Okay, so you can switch your headphones back on and just squish this flat, and that's your spiral. So it's just a nice kind of rustic looking spiral to go with it. And I'll do the same with 6 more head pins. Okay, so now that our wire spirals are prepped, it's time to do this. So now the trick with these is you want to drill your hole quite close to the edge, but you want to have it still, you don't want to go too close to the edge that it breaks. So I'm using a push drill which drills for you, and I'm just drilling into the side of the bead. So you can see that it does it for you. It's better than the manual drills sometimes. There we go. And I'll just gently drill the last little way, and we're through. Okay, so that's one. Now I want to line that up on this side, so I need to drill about here. Get that drill going, and you'll do this with all of your beads. Now drill the last little bit through. Okay. Now I'm going to bring over a head pin, because I need to make my own jump rings for this. If your jump rings fit, that's good, but my jump rings don't tend to fit in these because I have 2 smaller jump rings. So I've got a head pin, and I'm going to curl it around the largest part of my round nose, curling it around and around. the last bit I like to do with my pliers because I've gotten hurt before trying to do this. There we go. Okay, that should yield us 2 jump rings. So I'll cut, try and hold on to the bits that are going to go flying. And I'm just going to cut it. It's quite strong. There we go. Okay. Whew. That was the hardest part of the tutorial so far. So now I'm going to just get these open. And I'm going to fit them into here very carefully. Get them through. See how far we got. We might need to drill out the hole a little bit more. Just widen it out. And depending on the thicker your bead, the harder this is. So I tried to keep my bead not too thick, but you do need to have it thick enough that it's strong. So this bit's a bit of a pain, but it has to get done. Here we go. And we're through. There we go. And then I'm going to close this up and I'm going to rotate it so that the side that you open, so this side over here is now inside the bead, so it can't open too much. And I'll basically do that for the other side, and then I'll do that for the other 2 beads. Okay, so finished these 3 and we're ready to go. So I'll bring over some jump rings because we need to attach these. So we're going to need 4 jump rings. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I'll just put that aside. And I'll open up one and attach those together. Okay. And I'll do the same on the other side. Open that up. And attach it. Okay, so now we have those together. Then I'll bring over another jump ring, and now I've cut a length of chain. So I've measured the entire thing so that I get around a 16-inch necklace at the end. So I've cut 2 lengths of chain that are equal lengths, and I will attach those to each end. Open this up. And attach. Really like this design, it's so rustic. Decided I'm going to call this my Jurassic Nautilus necklace. So there we are, that's what it looks like so far. Just gonna brighten this up a bit for you. Okay, now we're going to work on this side. So if I go and have a look over here to where I've attached these, just to make sure that I get the same, we count, let's see, 3 of those links. Okay, so if I rotate this like that, we want to count. So the way this works, you have 1 flat link, 1 top link, 1 flat link, 1 top link. We want to count 3 flat links and then select the next top link, and that is going to be the one that our spiral's attached to. So I'm going to have to count that again, and then we'll bring over some more jump rings for that. And I'll open up my jump ring quickly, string that on, and then that will be ready to go when I need it. So we orientate this right, 1, 2, 3, so it's this one here that we want to put through. And now this part's important to get right because you need to have them all the same size, shape and things like that, so you need to just make sure that you're getting it right. So I'm just going to sit that right, see if that sits happily. Thinking it will be better on the next link along, because we want it to sit as best we can. Just take that off that one, put it on the bottom of the next link, and I'll show you the method to my madness in just a second. So it's going to be worn like this, and so the chain's going to sit like this, and so I want it on one of these flat, on one of the links that is not flat. So 1, 2, 3, this one over here, and it's got to be on the bottom of that link so that it sits right. Okay, so now if I sit this right, that's hanging right. I'm not sure if you can see that. There we are. So I'll do that, and then I'll count an equal space, so 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, so 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, and then you put on another one. Okay, so I'm finally done. So I want to just show you how important it is to get this symmetrical. So all of these spirals are facing the same way, and all of these spirals are facing the same way, and they all are equal lengths apart. So, and they're all facing so that when you wear the necklace like this, they're all going to be hanging down and dangling nice and freely. So it's just important to pay attention to those sorts of things, because it makes a big difference later on to your design. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to attach the clasps, and then we're basically done. So I'll bring over our clasp, and I'll attach it, close up the jump ring, do the same on the other side. I must say I've had quite a bit of fun with this project. It's one of my favourites. It's really easy but super effective. You don't even have to use a Nautilus stamp. I just think that it works really nicely with it, but by all means you could use something else. It's just, I think that the Nautilus would look quite nice. Might try to make some other fossil stamps. See what I can do. And there we are, all done. And that's how it's going to hang. So it's a little hard to show you on the tile here. I'll try my best. These all need to be facing that way. And there we are. But basically it's going to look something like that. So I'll have shown photos in the beginning of the tutorial so that you guys can have a look. But basically that's what it's going to look like. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. I think this one's quite interesting. It's a little bit more bulky than this one that I showed you over here. It's a slightly different colour as well. If you look, this one's a little bit more red. But they both basically have the same effect to them. They look really nice and rusty, and I just really like the style. So I do hope that that tutorial was helpful to you, and if it was, please do let me know, as that is always helpful to me. And if you wish to purchase the stamps that I showed you in the tutorial, these two Nautilus stamps, I do have them on my Etsy shop, and I'll provide a link to that in the links below. And just remember that if you do want to make this one and think that this one's a little too large, just skip this one and replace it with one of these ones, and you'll have basically the exact same necklace, and that will basically look a little bit different but just the same. And play around with the pastels. You can try it with different colours. It will turn out just as well with different colours. So let me know how that goes, and if you do try it out, please send in photos. I have a place where you can send in photos on the website, jessymatutorials.com, and you can send them in on my Facebook page. I always look forward to seeing them. And as always, I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.